Senator Rand Paul made an appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast, and both had some criticisms for the Trump administration. The senator also blasted former leader of the White House of coronavirus task force, Anthony Fauci.
Paul repeated the critiques he's had of Fauci for years, accusing him of lying under oath and trying to cover up details about the origins of COVID-19. He also questioned the validity of the pardon given to Fauci by then President Biden. Paul sent criminal referrals on Fauci to former U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland during the Biden administration, but he was ignored.
And now he says the Trump administration doesn't seem to be cooperating with him either. Take a look.
And I've summarized it again in a criminal referral to Trump's Attorney General, and I still haven't gotten action. But there's a couple reasons we should do it. One, he shouldn't get away with lying. He shouldn't get away with destroying records. But two, we should check the pardon. Is an auto pen pardon valid? And is a pardon a retrospective pardon back 10 years that doesn't mention a crime? Can you give people a pardon for everything they did in a 10-year period? I can't imagine, and I think the court might narrow that. But it doesn't happen unless the Trump Justice Department will do something. And I've been sending them referrals, and I can't get them to do anything.
Later in the interview, the conversation turned to ICE agents and the recent shooting of Renee Good in Minneapolis. Paul agreed with Rogan. Some of the tactics used by ICE can go too far. He also blamed, however, leaders of left-wing cities for not doing a good enough job on their own of utilizing their local police.
I think when you get beyond the criminals to the next set of people, who some of them are just working our country, I think it's harder. I also think that the ICE agents have a tough job. So do the police. Police are trained in this, and there's a lot of training on how you deal with protesters, how you do things. It would be better if it were local police than ICE. But what do you do if it's Minnesota and the local mayor says, we're a sanctuary city, we're not asking anybody whether they're here legally or not? One thing I would tell these left-wing cities is, if you want less ICE in your city, why don't you police your city?
Let's start with the COVID thing.
Yes.
You talk about dragging it out. I mean, Dr. Fauci has lost his security detail. The president has constantly spent his time attacking him. Don't you think, since the entire country is begging the president to focus on local U.S. issues and not abroad issues, not Fauci from Biden's term, fix the economy, look here, and I'm not pointing to the economy every time I'm saying people in the latest poll say he's doing a poor job overall, overwhelmingly, with what's going on today in the economy. Do you think that somebody wants you to bring up Fauci's name and COVID and Biden when people are like so happy that we're past that? I think that maybe when President Trump is on his way out in his last year, if he wants to take the time to waste his time to continue to look into Fauci, Rand Paul seems confused as to why he's being ignored by the administration, because this is not a priority right now. I mean, what can be a priority? Everything can't be a priority. No, every single thing cannot be imminent and ASAP for Republicans. It has to be. Which one?
This is
Minnesota, is the fraud a priority? Is Venezuela a priority? Is Iran a priority? Like, what are you talking about? We can't do a million things at once.
I agree.
You said the government is ineffective. You just said the CIA, the entire CIA was ineffective.
This is the highest priority.
For you, because you hated wearing masks, because you hated what Walsh did in Minnesota.
No, this is not about the pandemic policies. This is not about mask mandates or vaccine mandates or social distancing. I think Fauci was a disaster on all of that guidance. That is not why we want to criminally pursue him. We want to criminally pursue him for misleading Congress about the extent that scientific research funded by the U.S. government could have caused COVID-19, the gain-of-function research. That is what we want to get to the bottom of. And the reason that should be a high priority is because we don't want COVID to happen again. And if we're continuing to fund this exact kind of research in unsafe lab conditions, Dr. Fauci is the foremost public advocate, and has been for decades, of the U.S. government paying for gain-of-function research, saying it is important and the benefits outweigh the risk and we should do it. And our own government has concluded that COVID did emerge from a lab that was conducting these kinds of experiments paid for by U.S. taxpayer dollars. What can be more important than making sure we do not create the same conditions that cause COVID? That's all I care about. I don't care about I care, but it's not something we're going to, you're right. We're not going to continue to beat a dead horse about shutdowns or whatever. This is about not creating COVID again. And Fauci it's important to consider what the pardon says for Fauci. A lot of people didn't pay attention to this. So Fauci had been in government service, since the 80s for forever. He was one of the highest paid government employees there is, because he's been in it big national health advisor for decades. He had been the coronavirus advisor for a couple of years, for when last year of Trump's term, and then for Biden. The pardon, so you would think that this blanket pardon to just make sure he doesn't get witch hunted by Republicans would do one of two things. You would think the time limit would be just while he's COVID advisor, or it would be, the entire time he's in government. Either of those. It is not. It dates to 2014. In the letter, Biden said he is pardoned for everything from 2014 on. Well, what's novel about 2014? 2014 is when the Obama administration ordered the U.S. government, he put a pause on gain-of-function research. He said, you know what? He was briefed on this. He said, he was right. I agree with him. He said, this seems crazy. No more of this for now. And Fauci has testified. He was deposed, and he said that during that time period, there was, however, a technical loophole you could get around to still greenlight gain-of-function projects. And he was asked, well, did you greenlight gain-of-function projects? And then he equivocated. He said, well, I don't know, but my deputies might have signed off on it. But this is the area of time that is forgiven. Do you see why I would like this looked into a little bit more closely, and why Rand Paul would?
If you and Rand Paul are so gung-ho on looking into this further, then you guys should look directly into whether or not gain-of-function research is happening, where it's happening, when it's happening, and how laws can be on the book to prevent that full term. A criminal pursuit of Dr. Fauci is not going to change what already happened, right? So I don't understand why
I want to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Criminal pursuit, and just like we know why, an inkling as to why Biden would pardon Fauci. I don't know. You say he picked 2014, not his entire career, when he's been doing this job for decades. But the fact that he would pardon him for such a long time, I think when we look at the administration and President Trump specifically, they're going to try to find something to prosecute you on. I mean, look at Letitia James. Now they're talking about her hairdresser. They're trying to look to see a connection about campaign. So they're going for any fruit. It's not even lowest hanging high. They're just going for any fruit.
Well, that's why it's so weird they won't do this. It's so weird that Trump administration, he's doing, James Comey, Letitia James, trying to find a pretext for everybody. Oh, okay. A lot of those, I think, are a waste of time. But as long as we're doing this, let's try out Fauci. Let's test this pardon.
He's taking. Maybe this is the one time he's like, this is not effective. I hired a prosecutor that was invalid for Letitia James. The whole case fell through. Nobody's relitigating this thing. It failed. Now I'm looking at a hairdresser. I'm pulling at straws. Let me not pull up another thing when Dr. Fauci has already been pardoned and make that my new witch hunt, and that fails. Trump doesn't really like to fail. So I think if he's ignoring,
I would like to hunt.
Rand Paul,
I will hunt this witch.
Well, I think it is not, and I think that, and also we can't go without talking about what he said about Minnesota. About
I want to address that. I listened to most of this interview, and I thought Rand had a lot of really valid things to say. It was clear he was not, full-throatedly defending everything ICE does. He is, he's a libertarian. He is uncomfortable with law enforcement excesses. Rand Paul, it was the author of a bill to prevent no-knock type raids that was responsible for the death of Breonna Taylor, if you remember that. He has done a lot of good on civil liberties type stuff to mitigate the harms of over-policing. And so, he expressed discomfort with that. He said, Joe Rogan asked him about, these are masked, anonymous police officers doing all this. And Rand said he thought it was difficult to justify having that, maybe if they're on the border in where it's very dangerous, like southern border, then maybe they should be identities protected. He thinks it's less justifiable in these kinds of circumstances. But he did say, as I said when we discussed this, that ideally you want the local police who understand the local laws and understand the community. You would want them doing the policing, not ICE. But Jacob Fry won't enforce that.
Well, it's this cart before horse thing, right? So the president came in, he wants to institute this new immigration policy. Some Democratic mayors and some governors are not comfortable with the way that he wants to institute these policies. Some of them are open to dialogue. Some of them are less open and being very publicly belligerent, but so is the president. And so I think as mature adults, some dialogue has to happen about how to move these policies forward, because a lot of people, whether we're talking about crime or immigration, have said, and you can't believe this, we'd like more police. You're like, not the same people who said abolish the police, right? Some people are saying we'd be open to having local community policing. And so even if dialogues have changed since 2020, that's still a change that people are open to having conversation about what's effective and what's not. And I think what Joe Rogan has been consistently asking is, as we raid warehouses and as we go about this immigration policy in a way that wasn't thoroughly, in Joe Rogan's perspective, spelled out to him, is this the outcome that we were looking for? And I bring it back to the fact, whether you think Renee Good was right or wrong, do we want a dead American citizen because ICE agents were in a city trying to find migrants based off of a fraud case? It's like, what were we looking for when we wanted to change immigration? Were we looking for the crime committers and going in and finding those people? Or are we looking for anybody that works in any single factory? And I think that Rand Paul being on there and saying that he has some nuance is what more elected officials should be able to do, because the policy isn't working no matter what you say. People can agree, and whether you agree or not, Biden was ineffective on immigration, tried to do something about it as he exited the office. It was not an effective policy. He could have done something anytime before that. And Trump has way too aggressive of immigration policies that a lot of people are critical of. Even big bro podcasters that loved him are very critical of what's happening now. And so he has to figure out how to rectify that, because people feel like they didn't vote for this.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it would be helpful if more people, more Republican officials, could, instead of this knee-jerk, not just defend that it was a justified shooting. That's fine. I agree with that. But acknowledge that it's a tragedy that a woman lost her life, and let's try to mitigate. That's not a situation. That's not a scenario we want to unfold. Even if there was nothing legally suspect about how it happened, I'm not saying we're going to prosecute the officer or anything like that, but it's a tragedy that someone got killed, and we don't want people getting killed. How can we avoid that in the future? And that I say that to the protesters that don't tell fellow protesters to resist police instructions or to obstruct the police or to just drive off when told to stop. That's on them, but also it's on police to be trained responsibly and to not, this shouldn't be the first resort is firing wildly on a car, even if it's an oncoming car, because that it can put your life in greater risk. Again, I'm not second guessing what happened. I'm not saying in that 1 second window that who knows if that was the right decision or not. That's going to be determined, but it was just an unfortunate situation, and more acknowledgement of that and more discussion of how can we avoid it in the future, I think would be beneficial, rather than the just knee-jerk defenses you're getting on both sides.
Amen. Preach, preacher.
We have a lot more to talk about on Rising. Please stay with us.